Welcome to Tips and Tricks for Final Fantasy VI Beyond Chaos. My name is Two-Tone, and here are just some of the things I've learned playing this game for all these years. If you want more specific information about any of the flags I mentioned throughout the video, check out my UI tutorial and personal rulebook in the description. For now, I'm going to move forward as if you are also using the standard flag string that I lay out in that video. Also, don't expect me to be going over any tips for permadeath runs, as I don't really do those. Someone else could handle that a lot better than me. To Narshe. The only real way that the Esper retrieval mission in Narshe can be dangerous is if you are playing with certain flags. Otherwise, don't just assume that Firebeam is going to work on everything here. Try a few things out. Also, pay attention to your MTek list. If you didn't roll Heal Force, do your best to make it through fights quickly before your characters take too much damage. I've definitely had a number of seeds where only Wedge was left standing to fight Welk. And this goes without saying, but if you have Hyperdrive or Shrapnel in your MTek list, just spam it. It's generally a good idea to walk back down and save your game after defeating Welk, especially if you plan to check Arvis's clock for an item. As with certain flags, it could spawn a monster in a box that completely obliterates you. This is more of a convenience thing, just so you don't have to fight Welk over again if you wipe. Don't feel bad if you do, by the way. You're not a true Beyond Chaos player to me until you've been murked by the Arvis clock. If you have a walk through walls code, you can actually go to the right outside of Arvis's door and find a hidden pair of sprint shoes. This item exists in vanilla too, but you can never reach it. The short walk through the Narshe caves with your Terra character can also end tragically, so I recommend saving even if you're skipping the clock. And while going through the caves, the chests still behave like vanilla, in that if you skip them and leave them for later, the contents will have been upgraded. In the Moogle rescue scene, you can actually glean a lot of information about the future of the run based on the Moogles themselves. For instance, at least a couple of the random commands they have will likely appear on a character you get later. As with vanilla FF6, you can also remove whatever equipment Mog is carrying during this scene. And, though you can't remove their equipment, you can peek whether or not any of the other Moogles' items have question marks or exclamation points appended to them, which will reveal what has a mass effect or a junction, respectively. This is obvious, but save often. You never know when something terrible is going to happen in BC. A throwaway boss like the MTek armor chase in the desert can actually spell death, and you don't want to go all the way back through the meeting Edgar scene. And always beware of even the most innocuous looking chests. South Vigaro is a fairly important point in the early game. This and the Returner's Hideout shop are the last chances before the scenario split to find someone selling potions or dried meat. Potions tend to be scarce a lot of the time, in my experience, so if you find them, probably buy a few. If not, dried meat is a good substitute. You probably want to wait to shop until after you've looted, just in case you find some things worth selling, or maybe something that outclasses what you can buy in town. When looting South Vigaro, it's a good idea to check the outside boxes and barrels first, and then dive the rich guy's house to save before checking the basement. Definitely check the Hyper Wrist and Running Shoes chests, as the treasure you find in them will be similarly tiered. Even if they rolled vanilla, they're worth picking up. By the same token, don't miss the Guardian and Atlas armlet chests on Mount Colts. The items in them can be game-changing. If you're strong enough, or rolled the right skills, you can actually over-damage Vargas and skip your Sabin character's fight with him entirely. At this point, I feel the need to say that if your best option for damage is swinging a weapon, you're likely playing a pretty trash early game seed. Unless your Sabin character is over the top, there's a good chance you'll struggle a bit in the next few parts. There is no shame in re-rolling and starting over, especially if you're not having fun. Beware the box after Vargas, or after any boss if you haven't saved yet. At the Returner's Hideout, it's a good idea to wait until after Bannon joins you to start checking treasure. You probably wouldn't want to open a monster in a box with just your Terra character on your team. Double check both rewards you can get from Bannon. Usually the 3 no's are a better item, but not always. A few notes on Bannon. Just like in vanilla, if he's killed, you lose instantly. BC randomizes his equipment and commands as well. He could end up with a relic ring. Making most of your healing useless for keeping him alive. He can also have mass effects or junctions on the equipment he rolled that you actually can't check for safety, so always be careful. Just a little side note, if you do roll an undead Bannon, dried meat will actually still heal him normally, unlike potions, so keep that in mind. Ultros can be a bit of a troll if you're using the random bosses flag. He can actually roll having some pretty gnarly moves for this point in the game, like Magnitude 8. Remember that your top priority is protecting Bannon in this fight, so any way to get him out of the way is helpful, even a random jump command. Okay, so we're at the scenario split with what the community lovingly calls the meat Moogle, because he usually has a bunch of dried meat equipped. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scenario not taken flag here. If you have this flag active, Bannon's party consists of only he and your Terra character. Similar to the vanilla game, Bannon's team begins on the raft. Unlike the vanilla game, you have to immediately fight Rizapaz. This means that the last time you could have checked Terra's equipment to handle it was back at the save before the Ultros fight. If you saved over that slot, you might find yourself struggling to either do enough damage to beat Rizapaz quickly, or keep Bannon alive long enough to win. Typically, I haven't run into too much trouble with this, but I can definitely see it happening. El Nino, or whatever other skills Rizapaz has, can be a potential nightmare to deal with when you have no way to set up for it, so good luck. As for the order I prefer to do the scenarios without scenario not taken active, I tend to go ahead and get Bannon to Narshe first, as it is the shortest and least challenging. Hop into the Moogle Cave if you want, because the Rune Edge chest is an above average tier treasure. When you're on your way across the bridge to Arvis's house, it's a good idea to empty all of your equipment from Terra and Edgar. You won't be using them again until all of your characters reach Narshe anyway, and you don't want all of that swag unavailable for your other teams. I actually suggest doing this at the end of every scenario. I go with Sabin scenario next, primarily because you get the most amount of new treasure here that could potentially make Locke scenario easier, especially if you roll a below average Celeste. It's a good idea to pick up your Shadow character here too, and pay attention to what all they can do. There are a few points in the future that, based on how good they are, you might want to actually take a 3-person team to hire them on. Okay, Cian's recruitment battle is sort of a notorious roadblock. It doesn't always happen. In fact, it's kind of rare. But if your Cian rolled useless skills, or has, let's say, an innate relic from the Memento Mori flag that's detrimental, the fight with the leader can actually be dangerous. Let's create a worst-case scenario. His commands are Fight, Mimic, an Empty Magic command, and Item. An awesome list in any other circumstance, but he's by himself here. His innate relic is a gauntlet, and it also has a question mark and exclamation point appended to it, indicating a mass effect and a junction. Now, if you're not using the Gigento Jori flag, then the junction won't matter. But let's say you have that one turned on for our scenario. The gauntlet also has a mass effect of auto stop, which really sucks. It will wear off eventually though, so you're not totally screwed, unless the junction on it is Astral, which makes all of your attacks deal MP damage. Suddenly, a throwaway enemy gets to sit there and laugh at you while you have no choice but to lose. Granted, this is an extremely unlucky scenario, but it can happen, so just be prepared if you've decided to use more brutal flag settings. Don't miss the barrier ring chest in the Imperial camp. A lot of people don't know about it. At this point, unless you're using the Shadow Stays flag, you have the potential to be down to just your Sabin and Cyan character, as Shadow can peace out whenever he wants, just like in vanilla. The chances for him leaving increase if you've checked the J flag for randomizing the Phantom Forest, just by virtue of more encounters occurring as you search for the correct path. Once you reach the Phantom train, he can't leave until you get off, so if you lose him before then, consider resetting. Get a ghost on the Phantom train. There's literally no reason not to. Also, make sure you check the vendor ghost here just in case he's carrying some new stuff. There are even seeds where this will be your first instance of finding potions for sale. I'm not joking. The earrings chest is always worth picking up. Pick up the hidden tent on the floor in this room. There's also one in the top left of the caboose room that I didn't actually know about for the longest time. The luggage car, as I call it, has 4 decently high-tiered chests all in a room. You can get some pretty good stuff here, but as always, monsters in the boxes are plentiful. Also, it's rare, but I've run into bosses like number 24 this early on the train. It never hurts to try chucking a phoenix down at the Phantom train. There is a chance it rolled its vanilla form. In BC, your Gaul character will join you automatically on the Veldt, so there's no need for hunting him with dried meat on you. Once you reach Mobliz, I suggest doing the Wounded Soldier side quest. To speed the deliveries along once you send an item, either talk to the guy who tells you about the Serpent Trench and say you've never heard of it, or enter any shop menu. And then return to the soldier's house to find a new letter. After you've gotten his item, if it wasn't anything useful, I suggest save scumming to get all of your money back for doing the quest. I'm mentioning this for my own sake, but don't forget to check the clock in Mobliz next to the guy who sends letters for you. In fact, checking every clock you find is a good idea. Elixirs are tiered above average, so what you find in clocks will likely be pretty good. Or it'll be monsters, of course. Don't pay for the inn in Mobliz. Just use the relic shop bed for free. Take a mental note of any monsters in a boxes in the Serpent Trench's caves that you wipe to. Just because you can't beat them now, doesn't mean you won't be able to later. And this is one of the places that won't be available in the World of Ruin. Nikia will likely be your last big shopping trip before the Narshe fields. I suggest stocking up on any new equipment and items here before moving on. Particularly, this is where you can usually run across white capes for the first time. They protect from Imp and Mute, and they give decent stat increases. You'll want to have these eventually, as ribbons are never guaranteed in a run, and Final Kefka always has Train, which inflicts Mute and Darkness. Pick up as many as you can before the Floating Continent, because they're also not guaranteed in shops in the World of Ruin. Also remember, if you unequip your other characters, the dancing sprites at the bottom of the shop screen will not be accurate as far as the arrows. Locke's scenario should honestly be a piece of cake if you've done the other 2 scenarios first, as he'll have access to all the great treasure you found. Also, you don't need to have the Steel command to get the Merchant and Soldier clothes. He takes them automatically when you defeat them. How good your Celeste character ends up is highly consequential for the rest of the game. You can generally tell what sort of early World of Ruin you're going to have based on what she rolled, considering she's your only character for the first little bit of it. The X Potion, Ribbon, and Ether chests in the basement are your best bets for high-tiered treasure here. Tunnel armor can be rough if both of your characters are kinda trash, especially because you're not guaranteed runic, like in vanilla. This rarely happens though, and he's basically a pushover. Alright, here we go, Narshe Fields. How you divide up your characters is going to be subjective to your run, but generally try to spread out any AoE you have across the teams. My suggestion is to concentrate power into 2 teams rather than 3, and put your worst character on a team by himself. Line up your 2 teams on the opposite ends and block the soldiers coming in. Be careful if any of them take the right path through, and be ready to head them off. your one character team likely won't be able to defend Bannon if they reach him. The little mini-boss before Kefka is basically free. It might jump scare you with its sprite though. Kefka himself will have some things you might not be prepared for. Even your strongest team may not be the best choice if you have a character on another team that can mitigate the damage from Kefka. He still runs away, but it doesn't always say escape, which can be pretty funny. Keep in mind that you will lose your Terra character to the Tritok cutscene after the fields, so if you've been leaning on their skills a little, you'll have to make do with other characters. When you gain control again and build your team, remember to remove any equipment from the characters you're leaving behind. You can also loot the Elder's Clock and everything in the shed except for the lock chest. As always, run outside and save before checking anything. This seems like a good time to point out that if you're using the Memento Mori flag and one of your innate relics has a question mark, if you find one in a shop, it might be a good idea to buy one just to see what extra effect your character might be getting that you might not be aware of, since you can't check the innate relics in the menu. Aside from shop and treasure checks, you don't really have to visit any of the towns on the way to Zozo, but I recommend it. Also, if you brought along a 3-member party, you can recruit Shadow and Kalinga, and he'll stay with you all the way until you find Terra if he doesn't run first. You can also check the clock in Rachel's house. If you have the lock character on your team and you don't want to sit through the Rachel cutscene, the event tile that triggers it is one step into the house. You can actually skirt around it and check the clock without seeing it at all. I definitely recommend taking a trip north to the crazy guy's house and checking the hero ring location. It usually has something good. Jidoor doesn't have anything special to check out besides shops and the pot in Ozer's house, but you can grab a chocobo and make the trip to Zozo faster if you want. The only monster in Zozo you might want to watch out for is whatever randomized the Hades Gigas script. Ever wondered what it would be like to be quaked by the Midgar Zalem? Yeah. Me either. As usual, the time for the clock in Zozo is 6:10:50 by default. Taking the treasure in this circumstance will net you a chainsaw tiered item. But if you randomize the Zozo clock and you get hints for what time it is, the chest will actually be upgraded to what I believe to be a Pearl Lance tier item. I recommend checking the left side of the city first, using a warp stone or warp spell to get back to the entrance of town if you have them. Then climbing the building to Mount Zozo for the treasure and repeating the process. Then take on the skyscraper. Keep in mind that if you find a monster in a box up here and you lose, you'll have to walk all the way back up. So do so at your own peril. I give these warnings just in case you're like me and don't like to use save states a lot, but if you're okay with using them to avoid a long walk, there's no shame. Dodaluma is usually a pushover. The items he uses in battle are random though, so if he decides to use an X potion, you will have to beat him down again. Your first batch of Magicite will be close to or exactly the power level of the normal Magicite you get here, even if you randomize them. From what I understand, there's no world where you can get a Bahamut Magicite before the World of Ruin. Same goes for Crusader, Phoenix, etc. If you're using the Esp effect flag, your Espers will come with usually 1 to 3, sometimes 4 junctions attached to them, which can vastly change the way your characters perform. If you want to know more about junctions and what they do, there is a database of known junctions and their effects in the pinned post from the Beyond Chaos Barracks general chat on Discord. Many have been figured out, but not all of them, so maybe you'll be the first to discover what one does. There is another flag involving Espers that I always have on for my runs. The Dancing Madone flag, or Esper Allocator as it used to be called, makes it so that your characters can only equip certain Espers. You may run into a situation where a character can only equip one Esper that either has a negative junction or doesn't teach any spells, or you may have one teaching amazing spells that can't be equipped by any characters with magic commands. And you can even have a character that equips no Espers at all. Remember that after you have finished Zozo, Celeste and Locke are glued to your team for a while. Likewise, whatever characters you bring with you will be stuck on your team for the same amount of time. If you want to check everyone's Espers, you'll have to either go all the way back to Narshe or wait until later. This feels like a good time to mention healing. If none of your characters up to this point have healing skills or spells, it's a good idea to look for other options. There's a chance none of the first Espers you obtain teach cure spells too. And even if they do, Dancing Mad One may make it so that you can't make use of them. If you don't have the no breaks flag on, like I usually do, a potential option is to find out what your items are breaking for when used in battle. Oftentimes you could find an item that breaks for a decent heal spell, and is easily found or purchasable in shops. Take this time to save scum using each of your breakable items in battle just to see what they do, and then reset. Also, considering you have some element-resistant bosses coming up, prioritize your party members that have non-elemental damaging skills or spells. Really, you should be doing this all the time anyway, as elemental spells and skills tend to be unreliable after a while except in specific circumstances. One more thing I wanted to mention. If you're using the Replace Everything flag, as I do, then most of the vanilla commands such as Tools, Sketch, and Rage will be replaced with new ones. There are a select few that are never replaced. Jump, Magitech, Lore, X-Magic, Morph, and Mimic. You will always have some way to access these. Also, any lores you see throughout the game, even if your lore user is not present, will go in the lore list. The same is true for dances and rages if you leave them in the pool of commands. Check the Alas Draco flag and enjoy the opera. You will not regret it. You won't have your Celeste character for the rafters. This is the first section of the game with a timer attached, but you should reach Ultros with plenty of time to spare, even with running into every enemy up here. Remember those white capes we got earlier? Now's a good time to equip them. This version of Ultros isn't hard, but he almost always does Imp Song, and if you're not protected from it, it can be a real pain. As soon as you land on the Imperial continent, re-equip your Celeste character, as the game removes her equipment for the opera scene. Once I get here, I tend to check every shop in every town on the continent before heading to Vector. The best way I've found to do this is to check the airship shop first, and then all of Albrook. After that, head north to Zen, and then walk into the woods to the east for a hidden Chocobo stable. Take the bird to Miranda to avoid the long walk, and then grab another from the hidden stable to the east of there too to get back to Vector. Also, this little gap in the mountains down here, I call Hitchhiker's Canyon. Because if you turn it just right and squint your eyes a little bit, it sort of looks like a thumbs up. Maybe even a like button? Like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. Check out the Patreon and the Discord too. Thank you! Things can get pretty expensive around here, but it's worth it to see what's for sale. Perhaps one of the most important items to be on the lookout for is a Cherub Down. The enemies in the Magitech research facility can roll moves like Magnitude 8, and even Quake in some rare instances. So having a way to float really helps. It's generally pointless to check the shops in Vector, as they usually mirror shops on the continent. Say hi to Granny in her hut and get some pork butts and taters. The research facility is one of the first dungeons where random encounters become really scary. First of all, the aforementioned chance of highly damaging skills like Quake floating around. And second, the proto-armor will always exist here, and will always have the launcher skill, which will bring your party into death range pretty quick. And if you manage to survive a battle with them, chances are you'll be running low on healing items getting everyone back up. So be prepared. Don't forget the Blizzard and Zephyr Cape chest room hidden between the two boxes on the right here. It actually took me until I played BC to know these were here after a lifetime of playing the game. Go in the save room before engaging Ifrit and Shiva. This fight can be rough depending on your party. Ifrit will always have a big spell akin to Fire 3, and both of them will likely roll resistance to most elemental magic. This is where your non-elemental skills come into play big time if you have them. Also, this is a fight that you can actually beat with a well-timed running animation when they switch between each other, though I've never done it myself. You can do the same trick with the Master Pug later too. After checking out your new Espers and grabbing the Breakblade chest, your next boss is number 24. Maybe the worst thing he can roll that I've seen is a counter script that makes him cast Ice Rabbit or Sunbath on every hit. You'll have to outdamage it, and that can be kind of annoying. I highly recommend trying to inflict some sort of status effect on him. He has rolled being susceptible to Imp for me a few times, and that just makes him a pushover. After this battle, your Celeste character is gone for a long time. Just like with Terra, if she was your primary strong character, you can't depend on her now. This is a big batch of Magicite and opens up a lot of new possibilities for your characters. Again, prioritize getting any heal spells if you haven't yet. There's a good chance you'll gain a decent amount of magic points just riding the minecart, and may even learn them before fighting number 128. I have been roadblocked by number 128 before, especially if the random encounters on the way to him are unkind and you pop into the boss fight at low HP or with status effects. He's rolled skills like Disaster before, which, if you don't have the proper defenses for, will lock you in the escape sequence, racking your brain on how to get out. It's smart to buy any relics you can find that protect you from status effects leading up to this point, such as jewel rings, peace rings, etc. The fight with the cranes is always easy, and I have literally never had an issue with it. This is more of an opportunity to peek your Setzer character's skills. It doesn't always happen, but there is a history in my runs of the Setzer spot being cursed. In other words, the character doesn't usually end up being anything special. Again, that's not a rule, just a common occurrence for me. So now you have access to the airship and basically the whole world map, save for a few areas. The first thing I recommend doing is going to Zen to purchase the Bandit's piece of Magicite. It costs you 3,000 now, and only 10 if you get it in the World of Ruin, but you may as well take all the help you can get now. Then fly to Jidoor and go to the auction house for 2 more. It'll cost you a total of 30,000 to buy both, but it's worth it. From here, go ahead and go to Narshe and get through the cutscene. Now you can do the quest to obtain your Mog character. This will also give you access to the locked chest in the shed, which in vanilla is empty, so it'll likely be a low-level consumable item in BC. I've gotten a lot of eye drops. Also, the shop should have been upgraded, so check what's new in Narshe. There's a rare opportunity here to get some information for way later in the game if you're using the flag that randomizes your character's locations in the World of Ruin. When you're heading into the Narshe mines to go after Lone Wolf, you can actually peek which character will be there when they poke their head out of the cave for a split second. This will either spoil you on a future character's sprite, or inform you where one of your current characters will be. If it's one you already know is really strong, you might consider prioritizing finding your Mog character early in the World of Ruin so you can get to Amaro's cave faster. The community is fairly united in the fact that it's basically always better to quote-unquote yeet Mog for whatever item Lone Wolf has. Most of the time it's something very good. The only real drawback to losing Mog is that he may be a really good character that can help you out big time. But if you ditch him, he joins at a higher level in the World of Ruin and you get to keep the item. It's up to you at the end of the day, but I tend to take the character over the item, unless it's really good. Whether you save Mog or not, there's not really much more to do besides go to the Cave of the Sealed Gate. This is another instance like the Magitech Factory where the encounters can get scary. Let's talk about the Cursed Encounters flag for a moment. So, you can think of the areas where you encounter enemies as zones. Enemies and enemy formations are tied or assigned to these zones. What the Cursed Encounters flag does is sort of increase how many formations are in the zones. For instance, the bomblet enemies from the Burning House in Tomasa can usually only be encountered there. However, with Cursed Encounters, they can appear here in the Sealed Cave too. This can be good, since the bomblets have an easily identifiable formation, and therefore you can get some information on what you'll have to be prepared for in Tomasa ahead of time. However, the Cursed Encounters flag also creates the potential for, say, Dullahan to appear as a random encounter here too. I usually have Cursed Encounters on for my runs, but it's up to you, of course. Don't skip checking the treasures in the Atma Weapon Cave. Most of the stuff here is pretty good. Remember that anytime you're fighting Kefka as a sprite, The game actually considers him a member of your party. You can get away with doing some really fun stuff to him because of that. And the fight's basically free, so mess around some. After the airship crash, you're just a few steps from the Chocobo stable in the woods to get you to Vector. Coming up, this will likely be the first time that a timer will actually be concerning. When you're running around talking to all of the soldiers in the capital, don't check any chests. If they end up being monsters, you'll probably run out of time even if you win. You can always check them later on. Another thing you might not be considering at this point is how long your character's skills animations are. That character that's been kicking butt for you all game with their Exfer or Meteor command suddenly becomes a liability in a time crunch. Consider that whenever there is a timer involved. I assume you know the answers to Gestall's questions for a perfect banquet. And after that, you'll be rewarded with Doma, South Figaro, and the Imperial base unlocked, plus a couple of decent items. Go save outside and then come back in to loot the treasure you skipped during the time section. I tend to go check the Imperial base's treasure now, even though you only have 2 characters. If you run into monsters in boxes you can't beat, just avoid those chests next time and get the saved ones. You can come back anytime before the floating continent to clear out what's left with a full party. This is the first point in the game that I recommend saving in a second slot outside of Albrook. The Burning House section coming up can be a roadblock, especially if your Terra, Locke, and Strago characters aren't the best. You don't want to lock yourself in Tomasa and not be able to purchase everything you might need to solve the dungeon. Keep your options open by leaving a save here just in case. Take a second to get an idea of what Espers your shadow character can equip, just in case it'll affect your party composition when you take on the floating continent. If you haven't found them yet, there's a high likelihood that Dragoon boots are sold here. Command changers have the potential to turn a crappy character into the best character on your team, so it's important to check out what all of them do. If you buy a pair and they don't do anything helpful, I suggest save scumming and saving your money. Like I said before, the Burning House can be a pain of a dungeon. The bomblets can roll some nasty things. Whatever they have will also continue to be a problem during the boss fight with Flame Eater, because he summons 4 of them at the beginning of the fight. If they have a special attack that you don't have protection from, you might be in for a battle of attrition, while Flame Eater is slinging Fire 3s and flares at you as well. A decent trick is to defeat all but one of the bomblets he summons, as he won't summon any more unless they all die, and then just focus the Flame Eater itself. Remember that he will eventually cast Reflect on himself too, so any magic attacks you were depending on for damage will be moot unless you can bounce them. And then your reflected spell may hit the leftover bomblet, killing it and bringing in 4 more afterward. Understand that no matter how challenging a fight is, Beyond Chaos, or rather Final Fantasy VI, always gives you the tools to overcome it. It just might take some trial and error to figure out the solution. Ultros on Esper Mountain is interesting with random bosses. Now this may have been patched out, but there was a seed where I had to use an all hits are lethal Game Genie code just to beat him, because he rolled Baba Breath as one of his attacks. As you know, Foon Baba uses this attack to remove 2 of your characters from battle after defeating his first form, so that Terra can join you to fight the second. The way this works is by sending whoever it removes to the airship. Given that you don't have access to the airship at this time, it means that you can't retrieve whatever character it removes. But you won't actually get that far anyway. Every character on your team at this moment has voice lines for the scene after the Ultros fight. Whoever was Baba Breathed will no longer appear in the scene, leaving the Realm character, who you were expected to have join you during the fight, to cheer while the game softlocks. I had to utilize the code to get through this, since it was literally impossible otherwise. I'm almost certain it's been fixed, but there may be other instances of it out there, so you've been warned. I will share the Game Genie code for anyone to keep around just in case this happens to them. Don't fall into the closest pit to the stairs until you've fallen into the other 2 and collected all the treasure. I have heard that you can get roadblocked here at the fight with Kefka if you get a severely neutered General Leo, but it is so rare that you never truly have to worry about it. If you run into an issue with him, consider yourself one of the most unlucky people who has ever played Beyond Chaos. Now that you have your boat back, you can go check out Doma for its treasure, especially the ribbon-tiered chest in Cian's room. This is also a good time to think about where all those pesky monsters in boxes were that you couldn't beat, and go start clearing them out, as most of them won't be available in the World of Ruin. Also, get some warp stones and smoke bombs while you can. Warp stones in particular I've seen absent in shops in the World of Ruin, and you don't want to have to do the walk of shame out of dungeons like Mount Zozo or the Zone Eater's stomach. Likewise, make sure you've grabbed any white capes you can before leaving. And, of course, any consumables you need, especially status healing items. Another thing you can do is check out the Triangle Island in the World of Balance. Whatever monster replaced the Intanger there will have a move roughly the same category as Medio, which may be Grand Train or Quasar. If you found your lore user and you can take the hit to win, that's a big honkin' spell to take with you to the continent and will be good for the rest of the game. There are a few things to consider when putting together a team for the floating continent. The 3 characters you take will obviously be joined by Shadow after taking out Air Force and landing. All the way up to after you defeat Atma, you'll have a 4-man team. But if you brought your Celeste character with you, you will be escaping with only 3. I suggest only taking your Celeste character with you if you find her to be absolutely necessary for defeating Atma, as if you reach the statues and she's not on your team, she will automatically join, and you'll have a full 4-man team for the escape sequence. The battles on the airship are usually not a problem, nor is Ultros or Chupan, really. Air Force, however, can be tricky. There are a lot of things going off in this fight that can be scary. Firewalls, wave cannons, gigavolts. If you don't have AoE healing by now, you're going to feel it. Also, once he launches the spec, if your primary damage was anything that can be runicked, good luck. Depending on the type of Air Force you rolled, it's sometimes better to just focus the middle and ignore the guns, and other times it's the opposite. Losing here hurts, and you'll have to do the approach and the Chupan and Ultros battle all over again to get a second chance at it. Floating continent encounters can be really scary with cursed encounters. Don't be surprised if you run into multiple boss fights here like Dullahan again. Atma can be surprisingly challenging depending on what he rolled. He will almost always have Flare and Meteor though, so look out for that. This is a chance to talk about trial and error mid-battle. If one of your only ways to deal damage is elemental, try poking him with it once to see if he rolled a weakness to it. Also, pay close attention to your junctions if you're using them. Atma is a big, scary magic beast until you have an innate runic junction. You'll still have to worry about Medio and Quake, but everything else is pretty much moot. After defeating him, I highly recommend going back to save before the cutscene. The floating continent escape can be brutal if you don't have a way to quickly take out the naughties. This is another situation where your big Ultima caster is going to be more of a hindrance than a boon, due to the timer. Whatever you kill them with needs to be strong and have a short to medium animation time. And even then, the character doing it can get frozen, and you'll have to rely on other means. If your timer starts to run down to around 1.5 minutes when you're approaching the Narapa fight, it's probably good to skip that treasure to your left. If it's a monster, you're doomed. Even if it's not, those few seconds will be added to the time Narapa will take up casting whatever spell she rolled 4 times at the beginning of her fight. You might beat her and make it to the end, but if you're at 5 seconds or less, kiss your shadow character goodbye. Welcome to the World of Ruin and Beyond Chaos. Time to let Sid die because it's faster and you literally get nothing out of saving him, and the story is more impactful if he dies, and he's a war criminal, and as soon as you make it to the mainland, check out your items. You will see some items you may or may not have known you were going to get. Remember way back in the Terra rescue scene? Whatever equipment Kamog had on is now in your inventory. You also get all of the items that the Meat Moogle had, which was, you guessed it, a lot of dried meat. The reason this happens is because both of those characters are stand-ins in the World of Balance for Gogo and Dumaro respectively in the World of Ruin. When you reach the World of Ruin, all of your character's equipment is removed and put in the inventory. Even though you haven't met the Gogo or Umaro characters yet, the game still makes sure they are also emptied, which equals Kamog and Meat Moogle's swag going straight to you. So yeah, check what you got. If you're lucky, one of them had a Paladin shield, or even a Merit Award and Economizer. Funnily enough, the short walk to Albrook can actually kill you. It has happened to me many times. If you find you keep dying to the same fight over and over trying to reach the town, consider a hard reset, because this also resets the encounter table you're currently on, and could produce an encounter-free stroll to Albrook. The shops are upgraded now, of course, so have a look around before heading to Zen. If you haven't found flame sabers yet, they're likely here in Albrook, and it's probably a good idea to pick up at least one. They're really good in a pinch for unfreezing your characters. Despite the panic of the townsfolk, you can actually check all the shops before heading into the collapsing house. Also, this NPC will clue you into what sort of status effects the monsters inside are inflicting. If you randomized your World of Ruin character locations, the person holding up the house can be anyone besides Edgar, Setzer, or Shadow if you save him. The collapsing house is another of those timer situations. If you're brave enough to chance monsters in boxes, the chests here can give really nice stuff, and you can't access it again. Even if you feel confident enough to fight the encounters, I think it's a good idea to test whether or not you can escape. If you begin running for a few seconds and the can't escape message pops up, then you know smoke bombs and warp stones won't work. If they do, there is no harm in piecing out to beat the timer. No matter where you find your characters in the World of Ruin, they still behave narratively as the original character they replaced. For instance, if you found your Realm character holding up the collapsing house, she will act as Sabin for the cutscene, but will still be Realm for any further interactions. It helps to pay attention to which characters are actually which, for reasons I'll explain here in a bit. There is a hidden Chocobo stable north of Zen if you don't feel like walking to your next location. Whether or not you choose to visit Mobliz and do the first Moonbaba fight is up to you. I tend to do it, 1, to see who the character there is, and 2, to get an extra piece of early Magicite. There's a chance that your characters just don't have the tools to take him out right this second, but even the bit of information on who is there might be enough to pop it. If you do go to Mobliz, reminder that there is a Chocobo stable in the woods south of it that can save you a lot of walking to Nikia. And it's a nice little ride. Nikia is the shopping spree town, for sure. The number one item I immediately look for if I haven't seen one yet is the Enhancer. First of all, it's my favorite weapon in FF6. Second of all, it gives +7 to magic power, the most important stat in the game. It can take one of your characters who has a good magic list but middling magic power stat to a serviceable character in an instant, or just make your best magic user even better. Don't sleep on the Enhancer. I'm going to stop saying to check shops here, as each shop in the World of Ruin has been updated and it's implied whenever you reach a new town. But just this once, I'm going to suggest you try to buy a couple of important things. Number 1, running shoes if they're for sale. Just like vanilla, the tentacle fight coming up will likely have C's. Running shoes protect from it. Also, peace rings. Confuse and Berserk are frequent in the World of Ruin, and they'll help for another boss coming up. Remember also that if you're using Mass Effect, you may not even need the peace ring specifically if you have items that have no Berserk or no Muddle on them. The chests in the South Figaro Cave will upgrade their contents just like vanilla if you left them in the World of Balance. Of course, they could have upgraded to monsters, too. The tentacles are pretty BS. Number 1, you have no idea what to protect from yet, as far as status effects, until you get into the fight. Number 2, you can't set up your Edgar character before the fight. And number 3, if you lose, you have to walk all the way back down. One of the tentacles should commonly be susceptible to being instant killed in some way, usually the bottom left one. So if you have X-Zone or Doom, give it a shot. As for the rest of them, hopefully you found some non-elemental AoE by now. If not, good luck. This fight can be tough, especially if they have condemned specials. bust down any memento rings you have. At this point, you can go to the Colosseum, but you're likely not powerful enough to get anything particularly useful out of there right now. If it's something you want to try, go for it, but I tend to wait until I get my airship at least. Speaking of which, you'll pick up your Setzer character here and go through the Daryl's Tomb side quest as usual. I don't need to remind you that pretty much every dungeon has scary encounters in the World of Ruin, so you shouldn't be surprised if there are tough fights down here. Definitely don't forget to grab the EXP egg chest for something good. Also, ride a turtle. Dullahan can be a total prick. He always gets a turn before you do, and if his level Pearl skill was replaced by something like Megazerk, and you haven't picked up protection from it yet, oh boy. One seed I had to backtrack all the way to Zen to buy Blizzard Orbs, which were equipable by everyone, that had no Berserk attached to them to get through this fight. Always be prepared for anything, I swear. Outside of that, he's basically as difficult as vanilla. If you're being careful during the fight, it shouldn't be too hard. As soon as you see him heal himself, that means he's fairly close to dead, so start swinging. Now that we have the Falcon, we can basically go anywhere we want. Each decision made about where to go and in what order will be entirely subjective based on your seed. So I'm just going to outline the next few tips to reflect the most common order I follow. Since the airship flight cutscene puts you right there, dropping down and checking out the handwriting at Lola's place is a good starting point. It will give you information at the very least as to who's up there, and if they're worth going to get right now. If you see a name that you didn't choose for any of your characters so far, that means your new character is there. In any case, it's a good place to start. Side note, if the character you obtained at the Collapsing House happens to be your Realm character, you can go right now to get whoever is marching with the cultists at the Fanatics Tower. Likewise, you could go straight to Narshe if that character was your Mog. This is what I mean by each seed being subjective, especially with the randomized character locations. Maybe the most significant of these is if you found your Lock character. In that situation, I would say go to Narshe immediately, as you can unlock the doors and get both a Ragnarok and Curse Shield tiered item, which is definitely worth going out of your way for, even if you don't complete Narshe on that trip. Either way, before anything else, fly back to the abandoned island to pick up whatever Esper Palador turned into on the beach. I have forgotten to get this Magicite until way later, more times than I care to admit. Let's talk about the Mime Time flag real fast. So if this flag is not active, then whoever randomed into the Gauss spot will be on your airship as soon as you get it, and the Mime will be in a character spot. However, if it is active, your Mime character will be somewhere in the world disguised as one of your other characters. It's a good idea to check around these spots if you're ever near them to see if you can get your Mime with any characters currently in the party. Here's a list of his possible locations. Make sure you attach the letter to the bird before heading to Zozo. I've forgotten it before. If you don't, the guy who tells the truth won't sell you the rust rid. I've run into some pretty nasty mobs on Mount Zozo. It is the first dungeon I would suggest diving, but there is a chance you'll have to bail. Expect that as a possibility for every dungeon going forward. Luckily, Mount Zozo doesn't have a boss, unless you include the Storm Dragon location. Usually the dragons are randomized amongst each other, so you may not encounter the Storm Dragon up here. Even if you can't win, knowledge is power, so checking which dragon is here and reloading the save isn't a bad idea. From here, you may as well head to Moblitz. You have knowledge of who's there already if you stopped in earlier, and if you beat his first form then, you only have Fumbaba's next two to deal with. He tends to roll susceptibility to sleep, so take advantage of that if you can. He can roll things like Flare, so it's a little dangerous. Afterward, I like to jump into the Zone Eater. The monsters there are really strong, but you might be able to smoke bomb from some of them. But it's another dungeon with no boss at the end, so navigating the encounters, and the damn construction workers, is your only real concern. Get knocked down by them at least once so you can get the treasure below. This is one of those really annoying dungeons to walk all the way out of if you didn't pick up warp stones, so I hope you brought them with you. This is probably where my personal bias is going to become apparent. I hate the Chatternook fight with a burning passion, so until I'm sure I have a way to do massive damage to him, I tend to avoid the Jiddor dungeon for as long as possible. That being said, this is where my path can deviate based on specifics. If my shadow character is really good, I might consider doing the cave on the Veldt, but SR Behemoth is no joke. The other option is, if I found my Mog character, just going ahead and finishing up Narshe. Since the latter is usually where I end up, I'll do it in that order. Same with the others, checking which dragon is in the snowfields is a good idea. Though I suggest doing some dragon dodging to reach the save point first, so you don't have to walk through Narshe again if you lose. There is a decent chance you can defeat whatever dragon you find on a first visit to any given location where one is, depending on how good your characters and equipment are, so it never hurts to try. Tritalk is largely easy. It should also be mentioned that he will almost always have a way to freeze your characters. I haven't talked about this up to this point, since it's pretty rare to not have gotten a targetable fire spell by now. A flame saber really comes in handy. I always keep one around in case of emergency. Equip it mid-battle and swing on anyone frozen to thaw them immediately. Definitely go save after this fight, as the Sasquatch cave enemies can be rough sometimes. I have never in my life had trouble fighting Umaro. He is basically a World of Balance boss thrown at the end of a World of Ruin dungeon. Don't be afraid of him at all. Seriously. I should mention now that just as in vanilla, you will need a striker to bed at the Coliseum to get your shadow character back eventually. There's a chance you find one in its vanilla location in the cave on the Veldt, but if you see one at all before then, pick it up. SR Behemoth can be a real pain. First of all, if you cast Flare on him at all, his counter script will cast Medio, which is pretty bad. This boss may be the most filled with variety of all bosses considering how many different skills he can throw out. You never really know what to expect from him. The only thing for certain is that you'll win a Thunderblade every time. I swear, if anyone has gotten something besides a Thunderblade from defeating his second form, I want proof. I feel the need to address the flying butthole in the room. You're doing a lot of flying around the world map, and there's one particular dude who doesn't like that very much. Make sure you save every time before taking off for a new location. Doomgaze does not forgive, nor does he forget. Now there's really nothing left but Jiddor or the Phoenix Cave. Though the fight is BS, it's probably Chad time. You could go to the Phoenix Cave now, but you want to make sure you have every option available to you before diving it, in my opinion. But before that, this is a pretty fair time to go check what you can get from the Coliseum. You probably have a pretty big list of good items that can trade for even better ones now. All of the Coliseum items are randomized, of course. A good strategy, if you don't know what an enemy does for a particular fight, is to outfit what you consider your best character with a death protection relic, like a safety bit or memento ring, and a ribbon if you have one. Also, don't forget that the Chupon script is still in there, so expect to get sneezed sometimes. You'll always keep the item you wagered in that situation though, so don't worry about that. One seed, a long time ago, the still life painting had a sand ray enemy that spammed meteor on me. Not saying it's gonna happen to you. Just saying. Also, the lady painting had dinosaurs that cast Fallen One. Again, just saying. Unless you're using something like a high random boost flag setting, the floating chests in the basement will generally give you trash items you can buy in any shop. Avoid them if you can, unless you're trying to build a rage list, I suppose. Chad is perhaps one of the most annoying bosses in the game. The lady half pretty much always has charm, which you literally cannot defend against. Chad himself usually has a way to condemn you, and always has Phantasm, so watch your HP. This fight is more frustrating than difficult, as when he changes forms is nigh upon impossible to predict, in my experience. The best you can do is start slinging your most powerful attacks as soon as he switches in, and pray he doesn't double switch. If you haven't already, now is the time to go mine hunting. The only location they can be in that is potentially out of reach is the inn in Narshe. as that requires your lock character, who could have been randomized at the end of the Phoenix Cave. Another possibility is that you find your mime hiding somewhere, but they are disguised as the character you haven't found yet. Either way, it's still worth it to look around for them before the Phoenix Cave, as this dungeon is pretty involved and you need all the help you can get. The Phoenix Cave is an undertaking of a dungeon in DC. 2 parties, limited equipment, a dragon at the end, and almost every single treasure chest is a monster in a box no matter what flags you're using. I will not tell you how to set up your parties at this point, as you know better than I do based on what you've gotten, but I hope I gave you ample time to prepare. A couple of things I will mention, however. Don't concentrate too much power on one team. If you have amazing characters, you should split them up between parties to balance them out with some of the weaker options you have. Also, like I said, almost every box has a monster in it, ranging from fodder to super boss. I've run into Girl and Sleet more times than I'd care to mention. This is not taking into account the encounters themselves, which can be even more dangerous. I've run into enemies who throw weapons at you for quad 9 damage. Suffice it to say, the Phoenix Cave is highly volatile and very unpredictable with what it can throw at you. Whenever you reach the save point in here, I recommend getting the other party to where they need to be before ever moving off of it. As long as you have one team standing on a save point, the other team can use a tent to refill their HP and MP to full at any time. Take advantage of this, especially before taking on the dragon. Unlike the other dragons where we were engaging them just for information or to see if we could maybe eke out a win, I highly recommend defeating the red dragon location on your first visit. You do not want to have to trudge all the way back through the Phoenix Cave up to this point to fight him again. Do everything in your power to beat him now. The treasures that you get for beating the Phoenix Cave are usually really good, and should set you up pretty for the following dungeons. The first of the non-character dungeons I suggest diving is the Ancient Castle. The cave on the way there can present some problems, like an inescapable dinosaur with overcast. You know, stuff like that. Unless you're extra thorough like me, there's almost never a reason to check the chests on the screen before the save point, as they're usually junk. In the Ancient Castle itself, as in vanilla, you will get whatever Esper replaced Odin from the statue in the throne room. Also, like vanilla, you can transform it by speaking to the Queen statue in the basement. Depending on what the first Esper has, you may not want to change it right away. There have been a few seeds where the upgraded version was actually worse than its previous form. I suggest saving after getting the first one, and then save scumming the second one either way. You also won't have access to all of your characters to see who can equip which if you're using Dancing Madman, so you may want to wait if the first Esper is at least a little useful. The only boss down here is a dragon. This is another one I suggest defeating on a first trip, since it's such a long way down. But if you plan to come back to transform your Esper later, there's no harm in waiting. Once you've left the Ancient Castle, your first instinct might be to head straight to Cian's Dream, unless you haven't found a way to cast X-Zone yet. This is why I generally suggest saving the Dream World for last, excluding the Hidden Cave in Fanatics Tower, which we'll get to. Like in vanilla, there is a more than zero probability that Rexol will retain his weakness to being instant killed with X-Zone. Therefore, it's a good idea to bring it with you. I'm going to continue on as if you have not found an Esper teaching it, or a curse ring for this next part. Alright, our buddy in the sky, my BFF Doomgaze. He's the last chance on the overworld you have to find your X-Zone Esper. I tend to take him on before the Dream World for a chance at it. You know the drill. He fights you for a little while and then flies off, and you have to hunt him down. Back in the day, the trick to find him was lining up in a corner of the map and flying in a straight line, which would guarantee you fly over every map tile, as he can appear in any of them at random. Nowadays, there's a quality of life flag called Region of Doom, which adds what I call the Doomgaze button to the airship's console. This starts the fight with him right away, rather than having to chase him down. Doomgaze can have some pretty gnarly stuff. Arrow can be fairly dangerous. He almost always has Doom, or level 5 Doom, so keep an eye on your levels, or make sure everyone is protected from instant death attacks. If you're fighting him now, he shouldn't be much trouble. Earlier on in the World of Ruin is scarier, and yes, he can still jump scare the hell out of you when you're flying around. So save before every takeoff. Hopefully Doomgaze had your X-Zone Esper, but if not, a trip to the Colosseum may be in order to find a cursed ring. I suggest doing this anyway at different points of your game, just to see if you found something trading for a game-breaking item. Also, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk a little about one personal rule I have that you most certainly don't have to follow, but I find that it makes the game more challenging. So, as we all know, the Paladin Shield is the best item in the game. Period. And one of the most busted pieces of equipment in classic Final Fantasy. The Paladin Shield can trivialize your entire experience playing BC if you get it early. Further, if you find an enemy that drops them reliably, every character that can equip one will basically become unkillable in a lot of cases. That is why I ban the use of the Paladin Shield until after I gain all of my characters back. And even then, I would restrict the number of them to 2. 1 Paladin Shield you find or can trade for, and 1 you uncurse from the Cursed Shield. Again, this is totally just me. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being overpowered and invincible, if it's fun for you. I'll put one more of my rules out there while we're at it. I totally, and I mean totally, ban use of the dice and fixed dice in my runs. What I've learned from using these items throughout my time playing BC is, whatever your character was doing before you could equip fixed dice on them is totally null and void. All they do is chuck dice now and do massive non-elemental damage. And you've probably found a Genji glove or something with dual wield on it, and likely something with an offering effect. So now let's chuck 8 rounds of fixed dice for tens of thousands of damage. There is too much potential for homogenized gameplay with dice and fixed dice being legal. So I permanently ban them. Not something you have to do, and I wouldn't think any less of you for using them. It's just not my preference. If you want to know more about my preferred flags and personal rulebook, check out this video in the description. Whatever team you bring into the Dream World, I suggest making sure all 3 either have an item command for using Phoenix Downs in battle, or a way to pick a character up like the life spell. You will not want to be without this, even if you do have X-Zone. Remember that you'll be a solo character for the beginning of the Dream World, and that you'll only have a max party of 3, so be careful. The enemies here, like every other late game dungeon, can be very tough. Another item you may want to make sure you brought a few of is Jewel Rings. The Dream Stooges will always have Delta Hit, which petrifies a character. Also, one of the Stooges is almost always susceptible to instant death, like Doom or X-Zone, so test the waters. The Flying Stooge will always have Pearl Wind, and can bring the other 2 back to life as well. So it's a good idea to take him out first with strong single target attacks. There is a rare glitch that can happen in BC when one of the Stooges is brought back to life. It will be present on the screen and invisible, but you can't target it. This has caused me some panic before, but eventually it just kind of goes away. I feel like it has something to do with the script for Larry, who can run away from the battle and also come back, but don't quote me on that. The train has a particularly high encounter rate in my experience, and I've run into a lot of tough enemies here. And also a monster in a box with 5 ice dragons in it, but that's besides the point. One tip I have for this area is something I didn't learn until I started playing BC. This switch, you don't have to hit it and run around to the chest before it turns back. Just hit it twice and you can take a step to the left to grab the treasure. The Magitech section is potentially scary, though I've never been roadblocked by it. I can definitely see it happening. Granted, you still have access to magic, but if you had any other skill commands you'd been leaning on, they'll be unavailable for any encounters you get in this place. If you happen to have any Mass Effect equipment that says no Magitech on it, equipping it will retain your on-foot commands, even in Magitech armor. So if you're struggling to get through, maybe try that. Okay, Rexol. This fight can go one of 2 ways. Either he zingers, you X-Zone, and insta-win, as in vanilla, or it just doesn't work. If the latter is the case, expect a really annoying fight. You will have to play by his rules, and allow your characters to die until you find who he possessed, and he reappears. This is why I said to make sure to bring characters with item commands or life spells. Not only that, but the Soul Savers are going to be pretty bad at killing your characters, as you likely have pretty good stuff on them at this point in the game. The idea is to strike a balance between having good enough stuff equipped to make it through the fight, and bad enough stuff that you can successfully murk your own guys. If you're using Paladin shields, it's going to be pretty hard to kill each other. Even if the characters aren't protected from something like Doom, they will consistently just block any attempt at it. You want to be able to kill your own characters consistently, and bring them back fast enough to throw out damage to Rexol before he zingers again. It's almost always a pain in the ass fight, but it's doable just the same. So the reason I've been putting off the Hidden Cave is because there really is no value in even doing it most of the time. The only real reason to dive Hidden Cave is on the off chance that his attack while alone remained Grand Train, and you still need it for your lore list. And most of the time it's been replaced. So unless you want to do it just to do it, I wouldn't even bother with this place. Besides, now we have to talk about a real dungeon. In Beyond Chaos, the Fanatics Tower has been turned into a proper super dungeon. First of all, every level magic enemy in the tower is actually the level that their name implies. So yes, level 90s are level 90, and so on. They are all still inescapable fights. Secondly, by default, the doors on each level have a chance to toss you to a different floor when exiting them, and it's difficult to tell what floor it sends you to, as most of them look the same. The only obvious floor is the first one, as when you press the button next to the chest in the first room, a second door appears on the landing below it. Also, this place is Super Boss Alley. Here's just some of what I've run into up there. So, let's talk preparation for this behemoth of a tower. First of all, we need to talk about the less fanatical and more fanatical flags. Less fanatical disables the vanilla game's strict magic-only policy for the tower. I use this one these days, but if you aren't, expect to only be using magic up here. More fanatical makes the door and floor switching shenanigans even more confusing on purpose. I enable this one these days too, although it can definitely be maddening. If you have this flag enabled, from what I can tell, it adds the staircases up and down floors to the randomization element for where you go. I can't be entirely sure, but it also feels as though the tower you come back down after the rooftop is a totally different tower than you climbed in terms of boss encounters and door-to-floor nonsense. I only recommend doing this flag if you've done the tower without it enough times to sort of get the gist of how it works. But even then, you will suffer. Trust me. Who and what you bring into the tower will vary dramatically depending on whether or not you enabled certain flags, or got certain spells. But there are, of course, some general tips I can offer. Wall rings are great, and can neuter a lot of the level magic spells. The drawback is the inability to use cure magic on your party in battle. Also, the enemies in the tower aren't stupid. They will routinely aim positive status spells at your walled characters to bounce them back onto themselves. And don't forget that level 90 magics pretty much always have Meteor, which can't be reflected. The same goes for bringing a junction like Innate Runic in. While yes, it will most certainly make the tower much easier, and even the Magi Master's final Ultima can be sucked up with it. If your main source of damage is Ultima now, which it very well could be, you won't be able to cast it with that junction active. There is a neat trick if your Innate Runic junction is attached to a weapon, however, and that character has access to an item command. You can essentially juggle the weapon to allow your Ultima to go off and not be runicked, and then immediately re-equip it to null any spells slung at you from the enemies. It takes some timing, but I like it a lot. Also, make sure you bring in plenty of healing items. Tinctures, ethers, phoenix downs. You could get stuck in a loop in the tower that drains you of all of your resources fast, and suddenly you'll panic trying to find the exit with only a few Phoenix Downs left and no MP refills to cast life. You definitely want to make sure you kill the dragon here on the first go. You do not want to have to come back here after you've been through it once, I promise. The problem isn't even the dragon at this point, but rather that you have to find his room. Not only that, you have to leave it, which will have a high likelihood of tossing you down a floor. And you'll only know whether or not that happened by going up a floor and into a door to find out. Are you getting the idea that the Fanatics Tower is built to drive you insane yet? Yeah. Magi Master, or level 255 magic as he's called in BC, yes, that's his real level, is a weird one. You can catch his Death Ultima, which he usually has, with innate Runic, or just Runic. And you can also make sure you brought Life 3 as in vanilla, or one of the junctions that can help, like Final Phoenix or Final Summon with Phoenix equipped. If you don't have access to any of that, what are you doing here? There's really only one option left, and, well, if you plan to rasp him to death, I hope you haven't made any plans for a while. Even with a turbo button, it can take ages. Regardless, there is also the chance that he can just softlock you by rolling a counter quick spell. Or even casting Life 3 on himself and then doing it immediately upon returning from said Life 3. I've seen it happen. This is why I suggest using save states in the Fanatics Tower. Seriously. I really don't like using save states. Like, at all. But the Fanatics Tower is so unforgiving, I make an exception. Also, in Beyond Chaos, they have put a piece of Magicite behind Magi Master. It is a huge insult to injury if your Life 3 teaching Esper is there. I hope you made it out of there. Really, I do. This is the most sincere concern for your health that you'll hear from me in this video. Take a break after the Fanatics Tower. For real. Please. You good now? Okay. Let's talk about dragons for a second. I've avoided discussing them up to now, as you never know which one will appear where, so here's my retroactive tips for them, considering this is usually the point in the game that I go and clear up the ones I haven't beaten yet. The dragons that never seem to give me much trouble are the Ice Dragon, Red Dragon, and Gold Dragon, mostly because their elements tend to be retained a lot of the time, and the skills they have that are replaced are usually not very dangerous. Likewise with the Dirt Dragon, though less so, as whatever replaced Quake can be scary, and the Skull Dragon, which I don't think I've ever struggled to beat unless I was trying really, really early. The ones to really watch out for are the Storm Dragon, White Dragon, and Blue Dragon. I'll talk about them in order of least dangerous to most dangerous. White Dragon will constantly spam whatever spell replaced Pearl in BC. Depending on what that spell is, your characters could be dead before you even get a turn. Luckily, once you know what it is, you can guard against it. But if it's in the Fanatics Tower, as in vanilla, you'll have to beat it when you encounter it, or get ready for a climb. I swear, use save states up there, guys. Please. The Blue Dragon can be tough even if his vanilla spells aren't replaced. He has Blaster, Ice 3, and Clean Sweep in vanilla, all of which are potentially damaging. Factor in the chance of them rolling into even stronger spells in their category, and you might be in for some pain. The Storm Dragon is the most volatile of all of the dragons in BC. There is a very high likelihood, in my experience, that he can roll Grand Train, Quasar, or even Goner as one of his spells, and call on it as his opening attack. Of the three, you'll be lucky if you got Goner, because the other two are big, dumb, defense-piercing damage. All you can do is try to tank it, and hope you get some damage out, and HP heal before he does it again. There really is no strategy I can think of besides making sure you have tons of HP. Once you've finished up all of the overworld dragons and done some last-minute shopping, I suggest one more trip to the Colosseum before the final dungeon. Also, if you're feeling it, go check out the dinosaur forest north of the belt to see what replaced the Tyrannosaur and Brachiosaur. Once you're ready, head for Kefka's Tower. We're in the home stretch. Now it's time to really assess your character's strengths and weaknesses. There are a lot of challenges in the final dungeon, and you'll have to leave 2 characters behind. Honestly, it's not often a hard choice, as it's really hard for all 14 of your characters to be winners. At least 2 of them, if not more, will be hopelessly below average. Characters that have middling commands or little to no access to decent magic are good candidates for warming the bench on the airship. Your Mime and Berserker are typically staples for KT, if not for your main team sometimes, even though the Mime's stats tend to be pretty bad. A note about the Mime. Let's say you have a character on your roster who can equip an Esper teaching them a really powerful spell like Quick, but they have no magic command. When you noticed that, you probably thought, well damn, I guess that spell is unavailable to me this run. But even if that character can't use it, they will still learn it in a hidden magic list. Therefore, if that character is on a team with your Mime, and you give the Mime a magic command, suddenly that spell is in their list. This can literally be a game changer for the final battle too. So that useless character of yours may actually be your saving grace. It should be noted that the Berserker is one character who cannot do this. They will not gain any magic points toward Esper spells at all, so keep that in mind. They'll usually make up for it by being a heavy hitter though, or if their Blizzard Orb spell randoms something awesome, which it has a decent chance to. Also remember that your Mime naturally has Mimic, which is a good way to use busted spells in battle without using MP by copying your friend's Ultima, for instance. As far as how to split up your teams, like with the Phoenix Cave, it's a good idea to spread your really good characters around. I know it's tempting to make one super team and then just fill in the rest, but this is Beyond Chaos we're talking about here, so really think about it. Now that your teams are set up, let's address whether or not you are using a particular flag. I'm talking, of course, about randomized Kefka's Tower. If it's your first time playing Beyond Chaos, I really don't recommend using this flag, as it can be very confusing and non-intuitive. Basically what it does is take assets from other parts of the game and mix them in with the entrances and exits in Kefka's Tower. You can think of it kind of like a series of bridges or teleporters. All of the original rooms in KT exist, and your destination is still the same, but you have a mini dungeon of branching paths between each. Maybe you walk into a door and end up in the Sasquatch Cave, having to navigate through one of the exits to find the next room. Maybe you walk all the way through Mount Zozo, go out the wrong exit, and loop back to the beginning again. Or even, you're forced to deal with the Fanatics Tower again. Also, let's say you find the correct path for your team really fast, but you realize there's a button you have to hit for another team's path, and you missed it somewhere in Narshe or something. Time to go back and try more doors. That is the essence of randomized KT, basically to frustrate you and waste your time. This setting will also potentially teach you things about certain areas in the game you didn't know before. Something as simple as not knowing there was a gap in this ledge here to get to the correct exit after the other options ended in loops. It's brilliantly confusing, difficult, and time-consuming. And I love it. This is the perfect dungeon experience to top off a randomizer that's about pure chaos. Like I said, not great for a first-time player, but if you played a couple of seeds without it, I recommend turning it on every time after. There's also a benefit to doing so that you don't get if the tower isn't randomized, which we'll talk about a little later. It's important to remember that the 2 dragons and Atma are all optional bosses. Only Inferno, Guardian, and the 3 statues are required fights to reach the top. I still recommend at least fighting the dragons, as if you've been paying attention, you should know which 2 are left, and can plan accordingly. Also, they're holding your final piece of Magicite, which I know you want, right? Atma's not so bad as long as you defeat him before he gets to cast Ultima, and it's worth it because you get a save point afterwards. Save points are pretty important up here. It's generally good to keep a team on a save point while you move the others, so that you have access to tents for full healing at all times. Something I forgot to mention also, you likely will not have enough quality equipment to fully equip each party without juggling stuff around a lot. In fact, you'll probably have to empty and re-equip every time you switch teams, and it's really nice to have a save point so you don't have to do all of that again every time you wipe. Alright, Inferno. He's not very dangerous, though he does cast Meteor when his other parts are gone, so it's a decent strategy to aim a single target damage at the center until he's done. Okay, let's talk about the payoff for randomizing Kefka's Tower. So if you use this flag, you have likely noticed a couple of items missing from your run, namely the Dirk and the Rename card. These are largely useless items in vanilla, one being the worst dagger and the other just allowing you to rename your character. The community for Beyond Chaos has instead replaced them with a suite of random special items created by the devs and others. When you randomize KT, whatever secret item was rolled into your seed is behind that door. Of course, the conveyor belt makes it impossible to reach unless you know the trick to do so. I will let Past Tony explain how to do it. This is how you do it, okay? You want to take your first step onto this conveyor belt and hit Y to switch teams. Okay? Now, we're on Tata's team. What we want to do here, her team actually doesn't matter. We want to switch to Slash's team, because his is the team right before Janus's. Now, what you want to do is hit Y and X at the same time so that you'll see a little kind of a dim flash if it worked right. So then what'll happen is you'll pull the menu up immediately while you're still standing on the conveyor belt with the other team. So check it out. I don't think I got it. Yeah, I did. Okay. So now what you want to do is switch your first and second character's positions. Start holding Y and start holding up, and then hit B. You take us another step up, and then you just repeat the process one more time. Switch them. Hold Y, hold up, hit B, and there we go. We're across. And that's all it takes. That's how you have to get up this conveyor belt. Otherwise, if you just keep walking into it, it keeps pushing you down. But that's the trick. So, anyway, let's see what our secret item is, boys. Oh, hey, it's in Sabin's house. There it is. Scene's hat. Guardian is pretty easy no matter what. I don't ever recall having trouble with him no matter what party ends up fighting. It's very rare to beat him before he hits you with Tentacle though, which is more annoying than dangerous. About the statues. You can run into them in any order, but I'm going to talk about each of them in order of danger from safest to scariest, like I did with the dragons. Doom is perhaps the biggest pushover of the statues. It's pretty rare for him to be a challenge no matter what he rolls. The three statues will usually retain their signature skills, like Doom's End Cross, but even they aren't likely to cause too many issues. He will still do his aura shaking, which gives him image reflect and haste in vanilla, but more often than not, you'll laugh when you see them all null on him. Poltergeist is maybe the most random of the three. Sometimes he can be pretty tough. Sometimes he can just explode as soon as he sees you. Regardless, he will also usually retain moves like Meteor and Flarestar, which can definitely be dangerous. Either way, when you defeat him, relish the victory slide. Goddess is a huge pain. Not only do you still have to navigate around Overcast, she probably still has Quasar too. She'll also still have big fat lightning spells. And if the team you end up fighting her with has a focus on physical attacks, Love Token is going to be a real pain too. Also, it is incredibly common for all of the statues to have auto life 3. So don't get excited just yet when they finally go down. They'll probably be back. Somewhere, usually after the statues, there's a bit of a break where you can breathe a sigh of relief. These stairs from the Magitech factory do not appear in vanilla FF6 KT. But since they exist in the code, they were added to the Rando Tower in Beyond Chaos. They're always filled with encounters from very early in the game. So blow off some steam, wrecking some jerks on your way to the final confrontation with Kefka. Alright, we're here. Now it's time to really go over our equipment, especially if you check the Your Party in the Final Kefka Fight will be random flag, which I always do. Now that everyone has the potential to end up on your team in the final fight, you need to make sure they're all as close to viable as possible. The first thing I would suggest is to make sure anyone who requires magic to do their best damage or healing be equipped with one of those white capes we stocked up on way earlier in the game. Granted, you might have gotten lucky and found a ton of ribbons by now, in which case use those instead. Final Kefka will always have Train as a move, and any time spent echo screening your magic users is time you could have been casting Ultima or Cure 3, so it's best to protect against it. Also, any characters that you feel are indispensable for the final battle, I suggest one of their relics be either the safety bit or the memento ring. Sleep will almost always have an instant kill death attack that you will want to avoid if you happen to get that character on your team by then. As far as your equipment, basically assess who on your roster will be fodder for the various parts of Final Kefka. You don't want your worst character equipped with the only things that make them decent if it's going to deprive your better characters of more protection. Remember that Paladin shields are good enough that you don't need that same character to have a Minerva equipped, though, and that would be better equipped on someone who needs it. Also, prioritize magic defense over physical defense. Most of the most devastating damage you'll face is in the form of magic damage up here. This will potentially hamstring you in the first round, but it is worth it by the end when you're tanking Goners. As far as builds and all that, you know better than I do what your characters are good at by now. Set them up the best way you can and let's get in there. Okay, face, long arm, and short arm. So the very first thing I suggest is to pause your game and take stock of the situation. Examine the team that was randomized and work out a game plan in your head. This form of Kefka is going to have nasty physical attacks, and you've set up to have more magic defense. If any of your characters have Golem or Fenrir equipped, it's probably a good idea to throw it out. If you got your lore user and he has Big Guard in his list, throw it out on the first turn. This is basically battening down the hatches. Also, determine whether or not any of the characters from this team are ones you want to keep alive all the way to the top of the boss tower, and conversely, who you want to be replaced. Don't unpause until you have a solid plan with each of your characters' first turns at least. One thing I'll say about this battle is that the long arm is often susceptible to instant death, so if you have X-Zone or a similar spell, chuck it out there. Also, remember that Face will likely cast Quake when he dies, so floating is a good idea too if you have it. Short arm will do nasty physical attacks for the most part, and long arm will do shockwaves between its own physical attacks. This will likely be the hardest hurdle until Girl and Sleep, so hang in there. If you've taken out two of the parts, that's really the time to start thinking about whether or not you want replacements for your party members. If you have a weak character and they're having trouble dying, consider taking them out yourself before defeating the boss, and rolling the dice on a new character jumping in. Likewise, make sure your best character is on their feet before landing the final blow. There is so much going on during this battle, it's hard to represent. You will likely see N-Cross and Flare Star from Tiger. Tools will probably still have Delta Hit and Diffuser. Magic will chuck out tons of different spells, so expect Dispel, Flare, and multiple level 3 magic spells to be flying. Hit will just physically attack you all battle, and also do a 10-hit special upon death. This fight is very chaotic and requires some maneuvering, but once you take one of them down, it starts to get easier. Again, make an assessment of your party before taking out the last part. The general idea for fighting Girl and Sleep is to take out Girl as fast as possible, since she will just spam Pearlwind and heal for quad 9s over and over. The problem with this is, once Sleep is alone, he will start doing scary stuff like Medio, Condemned, and Train. I've seen him roll Merton as well, which will sometimes hurt him too. The problem is, that puts him on a clock that you don't have control over, and if your best character is down when he kills himself, you're SOL. Either way, when you finally take him down, his death attack is almost always an instant kill on one of your characters. You have to really hope you had enough death protection, or that your character blocks it. Otherwise, you might be rolling the dice on your final team. Either way, it's time for the final battle. Put your shades on, and let's do the damn thing. The first form of Final Kefka will always open with Fallen One, so don't input your commands until you've seen it and set up a heal spell in response. The rest of his moves are usually level 3 magic attacks and maybe Train, which any character you require to use magic ought to be protected from. If not, you should get Echo Screening before he switches over. Once you've done enough damage, the first form will die and bring in the final Kefka. One tip for when this happens is, if the first form has life 3, it presents you with a unique opportunity to make sure your characters are set up for when the real Kefka comes in. Fill up your HP and MP, wait for all your gauges to fill up, and when you're ready, push him over into the final phase. The real Final Kefka will usually float down and immediately do 2 to 3 attacks. More often than not, it's some mix of Hyperdrive, Train, and Fallen One. React accordingly to whichever ones he decides on. Hyperdrive likely killed someone, so pick them up. If you're silenced from Train, take care of it. And if you're at 1 HP from Fallen One, heal up. By the time you've done damage control, and sometimes even sooner, Kefka should have gone into his Goner charging phase. It's important to note that this is the safest time to do damage to him, as he cannot counterattack you during this phase. Sometimes he won't even cast Goner off of it, though you shouldn't bank on that. He might actually do something worse, like End Cross, freezing your characters. Either way, unload on him while he's charging, otherwise he can counterattack you with Meteor or even Ultima of all things, and wipe you just like that. And oh yeah, I almost forgot. Don't get too excited if you barely survive a Goner. In Beyond Chaos, he might do it twice. Maybe even on your first completed seed. Yeah. If you do survive the double Goners, Trains, and End Crosses, you'll eventually do enough damage to see that delayed flash and really satisfying crumble animation. Congratulations. You did it. Enjoy the ending, and I really hope you had fun. You know, when I set out to make this video, I was like, cool, I get to share a lot of stupid little tips I have for Beyond Chaos. Maybe like 20 tips and tricks or something. By the time I was done, by my numbering, I had 180 something tips sections, and had created a goddamn pseudo walkthrough for Beyond Chaos. I'm sure I made some mistakes in this video, or maybe even forgot some helpful things here and there. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Abyssonym, Cecil, Darkslash, and all the others in the Beyond Chaos Discord for all they do. I wouldn't know half of what I do without their knowledge and insight. While going back over my old videos for clips to use, I realized just how much of my time has been spent playing BC. And honestly, I really couldn't have asked for a more interesting randomizer to have hitched my wagon to for all these years. Every time I play it, I learn something new. Every seed I roll is a new story to tell. And every single time, I just can't wait to roll another one. I say it all the time. If a day comes where I no longer play Beyond Chaos, that's the day I stop being a gamer. And I'm glad I could share that with all of you. So thank you all so much for watching. Now get out there and play some Beyond Chaos. You didn't really think I was done, did you? The formula for the Ogre Nyx breaking is based on the last digit of the wielder's HP. If that digit is 0, the weapon will break 100% of the time, and that chance decreases by 10% for each number higher than that. A last digit of 9 HP produces the smallest chance of breaking at 10%. You can skirt around this entirely if your equipped character has the jump command. For whatever reason, jumping does not check for the fragility of your weapon, and you can use the Ogre Nyx, or any other fragile weapon, continuously with no worries. This does not work with the multiple jumps from the Dragon Horn, unfortunately. If you're poisoned, and you equip the Paladin Shield mid-battle, you'll still be poisoned, but you'll take 0 damage with each tick. Not super useful, just pretty neat. If you have a status that can be healed outside of battle, like Poison, equipping something that prevents that status, like the Star Pendant, will instantly cure it. This can save you on MP casting Antidote, and on consumables. Keep in mind this trick won't work on statuses that bar you from entering the relic menu, like Petrify. If you're playing with junctions active, there's a chance you could roll Gunblade, a super powerful junction that causes all of the equipped characters' physical attacks to proc Hyperdrive. It uses super balls as ammunition, though, so if you see them in a shop, even if you don't have Gunblade, you might want to pick some up just in case. The Cave on the Veldt almost always has an enemy that rewards a lot of magic points. When you're trying to fill out a character's list, I recommend going there, rather than chancing whatever enemy might be in the Miranda Desert. Don't underestimate percentage damaging skills like Launcher and Lodestone, or instant kill specials and spells. Though they're likely not useful for bosses, these skills eat mobs for breakfast, even in the World of Ruin. Our All is a widely hated skill, but remember that there are no defense-piercing spells in the list. If you have perfect magic defense by the end of the game, even Crusader is nothing to fear. Early game is another story. On the subject of unfocused magic attacks, if you cast something that hits everyone, and one of your characters has the return magic junction, it will essentially result in a double cast of that spell. Pretty nifty. Remember that Merton is both fire and wind elements, so if you're protected from one, you're protected from both. W-Wind is actually not wind element, but has the properties of an instant death attack, like Doom or X-Zone. So wearing a memento ring or safety bit will make you immune to its 1/16 HP reduction. Sometimes, the second skill in a combo command will take the targeting of the first skill, resulting in things like an asymmetrical Crusader. Exploder strats are 100% legitimate. Do not sleep on them. If you have a character with the SOS Warp Junction, and you keep them at critical HP, you basically have a free 100% escape chance against any encounter that can be run from. If you have the on near death effect on a character's equipment, you have the same chance to do a desperation attack at full HP as you do at critical HP. The same goes for any SOS Junction skills as well. They will go off at the beginning of battle. And finally, as always, remember the #1 rule of Beyond Chaos. Don't trust dinosaurs. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace!